Welcome to the third day of this wonderful learning experience, Defeating Terrorism, Sri Lankan Experience. On behalf of the Commander of the Army, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you. Yesterday and day before, we have discussed terrorism from a global perspective and the humanitarian operations with an in-depth analysis. On this third day, we will proceed to discuss about the issues that we had to encounter immediately after the conflict in the post-conflict scenario. Those are demining and issues concerning internally displaced civilians and rehabilitation of ex-combatants. And this session will be chaired by Professor Rajiva Vijayasinghe, MA, DPhil, MP. We are all human beings. Among us, not many would have the courage to refuse a personal invitation by the head of state for a personal meeting. Not many of us would resign a lucrative position on account of an injustice done to someone else. But the gentleman in the chair today has done both. Professor Vijayasinghe is a gentleman with such strong character and character to stand by the principles even when all odds are against him. He's a writer in English, distinguished for his political analysis as well as creative and critical work. An academic by profession, for much of his working career, he has most recently Senior Professor of Languages at the University of Sabaragamuwa, Sri Lanka. In June 2007, His Excellency the President appointed him Secretary General of the Sri Lankan Government Secretariat for coordinating the peace process. And in June 2008, he also became concurrently the Secretary to the Ministry of Disaster Management and Human Rights. The Peace Secretariat was closed down in 2009, and in February 2010 he resigned the ministry. He resigned his position in the ministry as well as in the university, as he was a candidate on the National of the People's Alliance parliamentary election. On 8 April, following his appointment as a member of parliament, he started his parliamentary career. He belongs to the Liberal Party of Sri Lanka and has served as its president and leader and also as a vice president of Liberal International. He is currently chair of the Council of Asian Liberals and Democrats. He has traveled widely and has published many books and articles both locally and internationally. Ladies and gentlemen, intentionally I cut huge chunk of his biography because it's very long and he requested that it be made very short. So with all his background, I'm sure that we are here for an enriching session. Sir, the floor is over to you. Thank you.
Commander, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to chair this session today on the second part of our experience in defeating terrorism. On the first day, we had a succinct overview of what had taken place, along with careful analyses of the sort of terror that we had to deal with. Then, yesterday, we had graphic accounts of what had to be done to overcome the terrorist forces in Sri Lanka. The stage was held exclusively by the Sri Lankan services in explaining this first and most vital part of our fight against terror. The officers who spoke explained very coherently the careful planning, the coherent principles, the brilliant innovations, and the systematic implementation that they put into practice. I had been following the operations during those days in terms of my responsibilities for peace as well as later for human rights. This war against terror was not like the others we know through the media, where the protagonists seem more important than us to what is termed the international community. Conversely, the civilians amongst whom the terrorists operated were much more important to us in the Sri Lankan situation, since they were our own citizens, than civilians in other theatres of war where they are seen as alien and therefore not treated with the same cares and concerns. I had been impressed earlier by the very low figures for civilian casualties, I believe the lowest in the world in any comparable situation, during our operations to take over the eastern province and also the western part of the Vanni. We heard yesterday of the immense care that had been exercised and also how this continued even when the LTT brought to fruition its sustained effort, which I'm afraid the international community did not try to stop, to hold and make ruthless use of human shields. I have no doubt that better understanding of what actually happened will make clear the exemplary nature of the work of the forces. But I think we should also note the other elements that some of the speakers on the first day brought up with regard to the whole operation, namely the need to continue after the actual battles with care and concern for the civilians who were as much victims of the terrorists as our own forces were. Today then, we are dealing with civil-military cooperation, which is presumably why I have been asked to chair the session and why we also have such a colourful collection of civilians with us for this panel. It is fitting, however, that the three main presentations will be made by military officers because they had to take the lead in the first steps needed to restore normalcy to those who had suffered the worst and the longest from the terrorism of the Tigers. How we did more than any other country has done to look after the displaced, restore them to health and strength, and then resettle them will be described first. This will be followed by an account of the rehabilitation program for those who had been forcibly recruited by the Tigers, children for whom in those terrible days the international community did little. Over 4,000 recorded violations of child recruitment even after a so-called ceasefire agreement had been signed. Finally, there will be an account of one of the quickest demining programs after a conflict, which has permitted almost all the displaced to get back home safely. I should note that, though the lead was taken by the military, all this work was done in cooperation with the civil authorities to whom the services were accountable. In looking after and then resettling the IDPs, the Presidential Task Force was the main authority, but it was remarkable how well the forces worked with local officials, in particular the government agents who had functioned so effectively through the war years, even in areas under the control of the Tigers. And I'm delighted to see here today the government agent for Jaffna, who was government agent for Mullaitivu during the conflict, who risked her life so much to serve her people and our people. We were occasionally informed that our forces had hurt her, that she was about to, and we would ring up desperately to see how she was, only to find that she was far away on circuit, not where she was supposed to have been hit, according to the Tamilnet reports, but working tirelessly for the people, which she continued to do, as did all her colleagues in the service. For rehabilitation, Imelda, would you stand up? And she's not the only one, but she perhaps ran the greatest risks. For rehabilitation, work is through a ministry, the Ministry of Justice earlier, and now a dedicated Ministry of Rehabilitation and Prison Reform. I have been asked by some members of the international community why military officers occupy what are considered civilian positions. The answer is very simply that we need efficiency. And as yesterday's descriptions made clear, our services have been trained to function effectively in a way that sometimes those with a lesser sense of urgency cannot achieve. That was the most tactful way I could put it. The speed with which demining was done by military teams, for instance, contrasts favorably with the record of the various organizations to which demining had been entrusted previously, and it should be noted, with no disrespect to those who do a tough and thankless task, that accidents last year, very few, in areas that had been cleared, occurred in places demined by organizations, not the military. And the accomplishments with regard to rehabilitation by the present regime, as compared with long delays in previous years, testifies to the continuing capabilities of our services even after the campaign was concluded. But we must also make clear the contribution, conceptual as well as practical, of civilians to these processes. I will therefore ask the members of the panel too to make brief presentations themselves on their work after the officers have finished. Dr. Safras will speak on the massive efforts of our medical officials. He's a civil doctor now working with the military for the Commissioner General of Rehabilitation into restoring and preserving the health of the displaced. Dr. Shantikumar will talk of our efforts to rebuild communities amongst those whose social structures had been shattered by terrorism. Mrs. Hettiarachchi will describe the survey of the former combatants so that we would be able to serve their individual needs, while Dr. Sushila Raja will discuss the list. Finally, and I apologize to my fellow Sri Lankans for saying this, since it is part of our normal life here, I should note that our panel includes all the main Sri Lankan communities and religions, Buddhist and Christian and Muslim and Sinhala and Tamil. Those of you from the full international community may not notice this, so I should point out that in the world of work and professionalism, we can and do all work together in this once and future prosperous, pluralistic society, Sri Lanka. I would like first to ask Brigadier Hettiarachchi